So good morning, everybody. My name is G. Fletcher, and I would like to welcome you to this morning's webinar. We are so grateful to have Dr. Shawn Weaver McKee, who has given up her time from America. So a little bit about Dr. Shawn Weaver. She's a double board certified neuroradiologist. Now, I know that this is a really big thing, so we're going to delve into this as well. It's just not a normal radiologist. She's been a former chief of neuroradiology at the USAF. I'm intrigued by this. 2 times Ironman, triathlete and ultra marathon. And she's also a mom of 2 teenage boys who are 15 and 16, is that right? And then she's also a wife, married to Dr. John Day. He's a gastroenterologist. And I had the pleasure of meeting them both when we were over in the Bahamas, and it was an absolute pleasure. You are such beautiful, amazing people. And yeah, look, I would love to, for those of you that don't know me, my name is G. Fletcher. I am Irish, but I live on the Sunshine Coast. And I'm married, got 2 kids, and I've been now with LifeVantage for the past 2.5 years. And I'm as passionate today as I was. I'm probably more passionate today than I was even when I first started. So I would love to just, Dr. Shawn, if I could just maybe ask you just to share a little bit about maybe your medical history, like neuroradiology. What does that do? I can't imagine that if I got referred to that it would be good news.
Right. I always tell people that you never want to need my services because that means there's something wrong with your brain or your spine and it's creating enough problems that, your doctor thinks there may be something wrong inside your skull or at least along the spinal cord. And obviously that's the center of, everything we do. It emanates from signals that arise from the brain and travel through the spinal cord. So yes, you definitely don't want to need my services. I came to this specialty because in medical school, all of the answers were found in the radiology department. Whenever we would go on rounds, we would meet up at the patient's bedside and we would, we would basically give the attending physician various points of data. And then when we came to an impasse where we didn't really have any more data, we all went down to the radiology department together en masse and found the answers. So I likened it to kind of like the Sherlock Holmes of doctoring. We were the doctor's doctor. And of course, the brain has always fascinated me. It's such an incredibly beautiful and complex organ. And I really, truly think that it's the best job in the world among jobs. I love it.
Okay, so I'm just really curious, did you understand or know anything about oxidative stress, or did you actually get taught anything about the impact of oxidative stress on the brain when you were at university?
We definitely learned about free radicals, but I think that was more in cellular biology, cell biology in the early parts of medical school and the training that went on before medical school, and it really wasn't brought up at all in clinical practice. We do medical school with the first 2 years with kind of books and courses, and the second 2 years are rounds and externships, and none of those patient-centered encounters ever mentioned oxidative stress or even free radicals.
Wow. Okay, so how did you become aware of it? Was it from a personal point of view? I'd love to hear your story about how you became aware of oxidative stress.
Well, I'm an athlete and I have, as you mentioned, run several Ironman triathlon, a couple of ultra marathons, used to do a CrossFit class, and I had a coach that whenever I would do the 6 a.m. CrossFit class, I would go and run, 15 miles afterwards before work. And my coach called me the oxidizer, and I used to laugh. And I used to kind of wear it as a badge of honor. And then I really started to think about it. And I was like, wait, oxidation really means rusting. I mean, it's corrosion, it's decay. it's not a good thing. And I started to put 2 and 2 together because I used to call myself the sickest, healthiest person I knew. And then I would literally correct myself and go, or is it the healthiest sick person I know? I could never decide because I was super fit. And yet I was always catching whatever cold was going around. I was always fighting off something because I was pushing my body really hard all the time. And I really hadn't learned the beauty of, this cyclical, give your body some rest. I just kind of, as I used to put it, burned the candle at all 12 ends. And so I felt like I was oxidizing. And so when he called me that, I laughed it off. But then he did mention to me, something that he had found that was all natural. And he mentioned it fought free radicals. And I was like, I don't want to hear about it, because I'm already seeing a naturopathic physician, or actually she's an osteopathic physician, but natural alternative minded, and we call it integrative medicine here. And she hadn't put me on a number of supplements. And I was literally like, I don't want to hear about your thing for free radicals, because I'm already taking all the best things. And I frankly don't want to take another pill. But when I went back to see her 6 months after taking 28 pills a day that she had recommended, 2 were thyroid hormones. There was thyroid and testosterone, but the rest were just natural supplements. And she said, how are you doing? I said, I hate taking that many pills. And she said, well, there's one product that's clinically proven to reduce oxidative stress by an average of 40% in 30 days in everyone who takes it. And they have real peer-reviewed published studies done by major medical schools. So my husband and I both take it. This is her. And I'm literally, my jaw's on the ground, because I'm like, wait, this sounds familiar. And once she said oxidative stress, reducing it by almost half, I was all in, because, I'd had this whole experience with my coach calling me the oxidizer. So it was on the forefront of my brain. And I knew I was going to take that product for the rest of my life.
And what did you think once you started taking it? What were some of the effects? What did you start noticing from maybe an athletic point of view, and also from a health perspective? What were kind of some of the changes that you started feeling?
Well, I'll tell you, I did not expect to feel anything, because among the 28 things I was taking, I didn't feel anything. And so I certainly didn't expect to feel anything from one added supplement. And the other thing I did was, since I knew this reduced oxidative stress, which is the underlying cause of inflammation, and I knew that it was doing more than any antioxidant that I was taking at the time, or any anti-inflammatory, natural anti-inflammatory that I was taking, I decided that I would just run out of everything that I was taking for those benefits. So vitamin C, vitamin E, beta carotene, turmeric, all these antioxidant and anti-inflammatory products that I was taking, I just ran out, recycled the bottle. And so I certainly didn't feel any better. I mean, I certainly didn't expect to feel any better taking fewer things. And so it wasn't even on my expectation. Initially, I actually had a little bit of discomfort. And as allopathically trained physicians, we aren't really taught Herxheimer or detox per se. But somehow instinctively, I knew that this little bit of discomfort that I was feeling was my body kind of taking out the trash. I thought, well, this is the new normal, I guess. And whatever it was mild. Everything was mild, but it was new, And I thought, well, I can put up with this, because I know oxidative stress is bad, and I know I have too much of it, and I want less of it. So I actually thought I was going to be feeling this way forever, and I was okay with it. But luckily, it only lasted 3.5 weeks.
Yeah, I think I was the same. The first 3 weeks, I slept a lot. And people say to me, well, how did you? I said, I was just falling asleep at 7 o'clock, but I allowed my body to do it. I said, just go with it. Sometimes it's your body saying it's working. So when did you hear about NRF2 then, this NRF2 from this? Did you then start investigating, like, what is in this, and who told you about NRF2? And yeah, can you explain to us from a neurological, how long have you known about this? Like, when did you get introduced to Protandim? And
well, it was after I started taking it. Of course, I went to PubMed, which is the National Institute of Health, National Library of Medicine repository for top-tier peer-reviewed published studies. Not all peer-reviewed published studies are listed on PubMed. But I went there, and at the time, there were 9 peer-reviewed published studies on this product. And of course, I printed them all out, and I read them all. And some of them, the initial ones did not mention NRF2. They just mentioned superoxide dismutase and catalase and glutathione, which I knew it upregulated. And then I started to see they were talking about NRF2 and the therapeutic potential of NRF2 activation. And I was like, wow, this is really interesting. And so I kind of went back and looked. It was a protein messenger that was discovered in 1994, and in Japan. And I just started learning about it, and I was absolutely fascinated by this, transcription factor that binds to the antioxidant response element on the DNA, and it's essentially like a cellular thermostat that senses cellular stress, and when it detects it, it releases from its little house in the cytoplasm, and it goes in and codes for production of all these survival genes. There's like over 500, probably more and more being discovered every single day, because as we go on, the research that published studies on oxidative stress and on NRF2 activation are increasing exponentially every single year. So a couple months after I decided I was going to take this for the rest of my life, the 10th study was published, the 11th study was published, then sooner or later, it was like a couple more months, the 12th, 13th, and now to date there's 27 peer-reviewed published studies, 24 of which are on PubMed.
Wow, and that's for Protandim.
For the branded Protandim NRF2 activator, yes, which is phenomenal, because if you look up your one a day or your Geritol or your whatever, Poppy's Protandim or Poppy's probiotics or whatever, Sunshine, vitamin, whatever brand, there are not peer-reviewed published studies on a brand. There are thousands on the individual ingredients, of course, because pharma uses those studies to determine which compounds they're going to try to isolate and modify and patent to create a drug. But to find a branded supplement that has actual peer-reviewed, third-party, independently initiated and funded studies is very rare. And I knew that. I mean, I was definitely impressed by that.
So I know when I often send this to some people and they don't understand the importance of PubMed and actually getting a paper on PubMed, like that's, because some of them are, done by mice, studies and things like that. Like it's really hard, isn't it, to actually get a paper? So to actually have 24 published but 27 on there is a huge feat for this one little product, this all natural product.
Yes, because in order to get a study published in a peer-reviewed journal, the author has to, the reviewing journal submits that study in its entirety to a panel of experts, and they're blinded as to each other. They're blinded as to the author, the institution. All they have are the data points and the format of the study and the design, etc. And they write back if they see a problem, if they see an issue, if they wish that this was stronger, or there were more numbers here, or there was a better way of wording this, or what about this and what about that. They get all their questions in, and then the author has to go back and address each of their concerns, and then they're each allowed to see the other reviewers' comments and concerns. Peer C will pick up something they said, further develop it, so that it takes years for publish a study that's submitted for publication to pass the peer review process and be published.
Wow, so it is a big thing that we have got these, especially for this one little product that in Australia, it costs $59 Australian dollars. So, from a neurological point of view, what would you even say to the Australians, knowing that that's how much it is? So you've been on this product for 6 years, is it?
Plus, yes. 6 years
plus. And you've already decided that you're staying on this for the rest of your life, whether you feel it or not. Because we have lots of people that say, well, I'm going to give it 3 months, and if I don't feel incredible, I'm going to come off it, And we're like, you may not feel it. Everybody's oxidative stress gets reduced, even in animals.
That's right. Oxidative stress is not something you feel any more than, the neurotransmitter going from the end of an axon to the next neuron. You don't feel that. You don't feel cancer cells dividing. You don't feel your cholesterol number. You don't feel your, so, if things get really out of alignment, out of balance, then there may be symptoms that develop that you feel, but you don't feel cellular processes. So the fact that your oxidative stress comes down is not something that's palpable. However, because oxidative stress is linked to several things, thousands of things, like whether you sleep well, whether you have, agitation or irritation, or whether you have aches and pains, or whether you, I don't know, have irritable skin or whatever. Once that oxidative stress comes down, again, you've got to give your body several months, because it took you decades probably to get in the quote unquote shape you're in. You've got to give your body months at least to undo the damage and repair the damage and rejuvenate. And so once you get this balance down to a level where the things that have started to go wrong can be substantially repaired and undone, then you may be able to put your finger on 2 to 10 things that are different and hopefully better. But just because you don't feel it does not mean it's not working. It works in, everyone. The published peer-reviewed study in humans had a p-value of 0.0001, meaning it's proven to work. And that's essentially, even though it was a small cohort, it's essentially that p-value is the probability that the results were not due to the product working, which means it's 1 out of 10,000. Okay, so that's pretty proven. I'll go ahead.
Can we get away from oxidative stress? Like, can you just say to the people that are on here today, like, what is like, can we try and give ourselves the best protection against oxidative stress, and what is it?
Well, I always say the Dalai Lama has oxidative stress. He's very, I haven't met him, but, I've seen him talk. He's very chill. He's very zen. And, he's not stressed, right? He lives usually in a pristine environment. He probably eats, non-GMO foods and drinks pure water. But because he does eat and he does breathe, he is subject to oxidation and oxidative stress. And if he's not, in an infant, then he's got probably more oxidative stress than is healthy, because we don't make enough of the good guys as we age. And if we live in a toxic environment, which most of us do who aren't the Dalai Lama, we're subject to EMF from cell phones and computers and Wi-Fi, and we're subject to breathing diesel fumes and airplane jet fuel, and goodness, I mean, it's hard to get away from. And of course, if we eat foods that are treated with pesticides, herbicides, etc., we're bombarded with things that create significant oxidation and oxidative stress in our bodies. And you cannot just expect to be able to eat some blueberries and deal with it, because direct antioxidants like blueberries, acai berries, strawberries, vitamin E, vitamin C, apples, etc., they neutralize 1 free radical for every 1 molecule of themselves, and then you excrete it. So have you ever noticed when you take a vitamin supplement, your urine is bright yellow? It's because you're one and done. You're excreting it, and your body can't use all that. And furthermore, we've seen in recent years that taking direct antioxidants, especially high doses, is actually harmful in 2 ways. One, when the antioxidant donates its electron to neutralize the free radical, all of a sudden that antioxidant now has, guess what, an unpaired electron. And so it becomes a pro-oxidant until it's excreted. Second way is that it dampens that fire that signals your body to respond by making the good guys just enough so that your body doesn't respond by making the good guys. And so now you're stuck with the one and done, and you can't do the 1 in 1 million, which is what your antioxidant enzymes do. So it's a new paradigm, and it's going to take the world a while before it comes around and sees what is self-evident, that if you make your own antioxidants, your God-given systems are much better at doing this known task than taking some synthetic fractionated, adulterated part of an apple.
So what does Pretandem do then to actually enable you? Because we say it's not a supplement. So, what would you say with NRF2 activation? Could you just explain to people what Pretandem literally does? Because as you said, it's your body that's the miracle. Pretandem is just like a messenger. So could you explain what it does?
It turns on your own youth pathways. Essentially, it signals your body to make the protective enzymes and proteins and components that it used to make when we were younger. So it activates NRF2, essentially. It's a gene activator. And when we're young, NRF2 is very receptive and responsive and really is a very sensitive thermostat. But as we get older, it's like that knob on the thermostat is kind of a little bit sticky. And this just frees it to do what it already knew how to do. So it turns on thousands of proteins and enzymes that let your body repair, rejuvenate, recover. It increases housekeeping proteins, heat shock proteins, etc.
Wow. So from a neurological point of view and even like neuroplasticity, where do you see, the NRF2 pathway, the future of this maybe going down for somebody like yourself in that field? Does this excite you? Do you see that, brain health is going to improve by somebody, activating their NRF2 pathway?
I do. I mean, if you think about the brain, of the dry, non-water weight of the brain, 70% is fat. And, oils are very susceptible to oxidation. Fats go rancid. Fats and oils oxidize. And if your brain is, 70% fat and it's susceptible to oxidation, then when it has excessive oxidative stress, it cannot function as well. So if you can lower that stressor on the brain, I think that the cells will work better. And from what I've seen anecdotally, they do seem to. And, I think that oxidative stress being directly related to inflammation, the brain is inside a closed calvarium and it can't expand. Inflammation causes swelling and expansion. And brain inflammation is a very potentially damaging thing. If you ever had to deal with anyone who had surgery or trauma and their brain was swollen because of the inflammation or hemorrhage, sometimes they actually have to remove part of the skull to allow the brain to swell. So if you can reduce that inflammation, oxidation, the brain can work better in so many ways. And it's just a powerful aspect toward brain health.
So really this NRF2 pathway, even if we go to doctors a lot of the time now, they're probably not even going to know that much about it. So we really are pioneering something that is really revolutionary. Like, where do you see it going maybe in the next 10 or like I've heard Dr. Joe McCord before say, NRF2 will be as widely known as cholesterol in the next 10 to 20 years, so do you really believe that we are pioneering something that is totally new to the medical world and will be as well known as cholesterol and everything in the future?
Oh yeah, I think that at some point when we get a reliable and inexpensive and non-invasive test, oxidative stress is going to be one of the first things your doctor measures. That's 10, 15 years down the road. At first, right, we are pioneers, and so it's going to be vehemently opposed, and then it will be, eventually begrudgingly accepted, and then ultimately it's going to be, self-evident, because, why wouldn't you address oxidative stress first? It's the root cause of everything that goes wrong. And as soon as they've come up with that test that will reliably measure oxidative stress, that's going to be the standard barometer by which response to intervention and therapies are measured. And, just to illustrate this point, Washington State University had done a meta-analysis, I believe it was in 2013 I don't know what year it was, maybe 2015, where they did a retrospective review of all the literature on Nerve2 activation. And their conclusion was we may be on the verge of a new paradigm in the literature health effects of Nerve2 activation, in that it is the most extraordinary therapeutic and most extraordinary preventive breakthrough in the history of medicine. And that's a big statement. But they stated that after, carefully reviewing all the articles that showed that Nerve2 activation, not necessarily by our product, but in general, but they did mention our product is the most potent Nerve2 activator on the market that we know of today in healthy human cells. But they did mention that Nerve2 activation, the pathway in the body, has positive impacts on, and they listed, you can go to look at the study by Martin Paul and I think Paul Levine, I can't remember. I think those are the two authors. All of the conditions that have shown significant improvement through activation of this pathway in the body. So, yes.
Wow. Well, I've got goosebumps because I hadn't actually ever thought about that the doctor will probably be there with a blood pressure thermos, take your temperature, and then they'll just measure your oxidative stress. It'll probably just be one of these things that a doctor will have. And why would you want a natural NRF2? Because I know now a lot of pharmaceuticals are making synthetic NRF2 activators out there. So why is it important that somebody would maybe go down the natural route and have a natural NRF2 activator? What can be some of the dangers maybe in having a synthetic one?
Well, I'll start with the matter of convenience, first of all. To have to make an appointment and go in and see a physician, be diagnosed with a particular condition that allows the prescription and insurance reimbursement of a pharmaceutical therapy is one hurdle that you would have to go through. And then you, of course, have to go to the pharmacy and get it filled and figure out payment and reimbursement with your insurance, depending on where you live. And then you have to make sure you don't run out and make sure the pharmacy is open when you do run out so that you can pick it up. And then it's going to cost a lot of money if you're in an area where you have to pay for your own medications. And every single medication being synthetic has what's called an LD50, which is the dose at which 50% of the rodents or subjects died. So because the body is not meant to has a limited capacity to detoxify from all of the foreign compounds, and so it needs to break them down. And of course, drugs all interact with other drugs and affect various metabolic pathways and metabolic pathways. And so there's a whole bunch of things to consider when you go the synthetic and pharmaceutical route, versus if you can accomplish the same thing through nature. Obviously our bodies are better or are equipped to handle things. Obviously things in nature can be toxic, of course, but that's the beauty of Protandim. It's 5 herbs that have been used in human health for centuries at such incredibly low doses. The power is in the synergy of the 5 herbs together that activate these pathways. The individual ingredients are minuscule. It's got 75 milligrams of turmeric. I mean, if you're going to take a turmeric supplement, you're probably going to take anywhere from 500 to 2,000 milligrams, which can have all kinds of upset stomach issues, bleeding issues, etc. So the beauty of the synergy of Protandim is that you're taking such small amounts of each of the individual ingredients that usually there's no direct untoward effect due to the individual ingredients, and what you have left is the beauty of the synergy to activate your body's healing pathways and let the body kind of take from there.
Fantastic. That's a great analogy. And I know they have got some synthetics out at the moment, and they cost like $50,000 a year, as opposed to our $59 a month. So I know what I would rather put in my body. I'm going to stop the recording and just thank you so much. And I'll just see, is there any other questions that anyone might have? And I just want to thank you so much for coming on today.